All right. Zakia, our wonderful executive director, whenever you are ready, if you are ready, I'll pass the
Born ready.
baton over to you. Born ready. All right. I love it.
All right.
Thank
Good
you.
morning, everyone. It is March 1st. Can you believe it? I cannot. Thank you so much for joining us to learn more about strategic plan and our RFP for new partnerships. But before we get into all of those details, I want to take an opportunity to introduce myself to those of you who aren't familiar with me or don't know me. I do see some friends on the call, so that's really exciting, and hope to make some new friends and partners as we get engaged in this process today. My name is Zakia Sakour. I am the executive director here with Kindred, but I'm going to just tell you a little bit about me and what brings me to this work. I am the oldest of children. My mother is from Southwest Georgia, which is where I grew up. My dad is a Ghanaian immigrant who became a citizen when I was 11 years old. I'm in my 22nd year as an educator, and I'm a mother of 3 wonderful children. And I've committed to this work of equity and liberation before I actually knew what those terms were. There were 2 distinct incidents that have led me to the work that I do today. As I said, I grew up in Southwest Georgia, and if just to situate that for some of you, I grew up about an hour away from the Alabama line and an hour and a half away from the panhandle of Florida. So not as south as you can get, but you get the flavor of the South where I come from. And so an incident happened to me when I was the summer before 5th grade. I read this book called The Slave Dancer. And although it was 1985, and I think one of the hit songs at the time was We Are the World, I really connected to the story of the slaves in that book. Later that year in 5th grade, we study American history. You have to recite the presidents and the preamble and all this good stuff. And I actually was reciting the pledge one day and actually listened to the words. And as I listened to the words, I realized that what we were pledging to did not necessarily apply to me or people who look like me. And I knew that from my own personal experience and experiences of the slaves that kept coming back to me from that summer reading. So I stopped reciting the pledge in 5th grade, all before Colin Kaepernick. I want somebody to make note of that. And I was sent to the principal's office. My parents were brought in to address the situation, but not once did anyone ask me why I did not want to recite the pledge. I was just seen as a defiant Black girl. And I knew then that I was going to have to affirm myself and kind of stand in my truth for at least that year in 5th grade, probably longer, but that was what was clear for me after that incident. The second inflection point happened in 1997. I was working as a full-time statistician for the Internal Revenue Service. Unsatisfied and unfulfilled in my job, I became a part-time after-school teacher at an elite private school in Georgetown, DC. The students I was working with were reading 3 or 4 grade levels ahead. They were playing chess and having dinners at the White House. Around the same time, I met my nephew through marriage, who was 16 and reading at the 1st grade level. Which is witnessing such stark disparities between my nephew and the students I was working with really launched me into my career as an educator. Within a year, I left my full-time job as a statistician, much to my father's dismay, and became a teacher. The inequity that I observed back in 1997 still drives me to this day. I became a leader in education to personally ensure that Black students, like my nephew, had access to rigorous learning opportunities, an educator who saw them as successful before they stepped into the classroom, and to be an advocate for them and their caregivers. So that's a little bit about my story. And I just want to say one piece about that as well. When I look back, I don't find it ironic that these 2 incidents where the school was centered in both of these incidents. We learned so much about how the world will see us and subsequently how the world will treat us in school. This is why I'm here at Kindred, working with communities to create an anti-racist and liberated schools for our students. So that's a little bit about me. Now that you know a little bit about me, let's talk about the importance of Kindred's work. We know that education is seen as the great equalizer, but our nation continues to power and politics create immediate and persistent barriers to access and opportunity for students based on their identities. Specifically, race and socioeconomic status and their intersection continue to be predictors of success for students in schools. Our education system has been designed to uphold and reward students whose families have the most access and resources. Policies and practices such as school attendance zones, unequal school funding, including the presence of a PTA, the lack of a representative teaching force, and traditional school hierarchies reinforce these systemic inequities, which impact students of color. Kindred works to support schools to become liberated places where Black and Brown students feel connected to the adults, they are affirmed, and where their intelligence is assumed, nurtured, and celebrated. To create just schools, Kindred believes that communities must rethink and re-envision the relationships and power dynamics between school leaders, staff, and caregivers. As Leela Watson states, if you come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let's work together. Kindred facilitates brave spaces for students, caregivers, school staff, and school leadership to build the mindsets, skills, and energy needed to disrupt systemic oppression and create just and liberated schools. So we are excited to support here in the district to lead this work, and also really committed to taking our work on a broader scale. So that takes me to our commitments by 2022. We have 3. One is to deepen our impact and serve 50 schools in DC. 2, we want to launch a Kindred alumni network that serves 500 active members. And finally, we want to expand our work to 3 new communities nationally. And I'll take a second to talk quickly about each of these. So the first priority around deepening our impact in DC, Kindred's work began in DC, and we aim to deepen our work in our first city. To date, we've partnered with 20 schools, and we believe that the diversity of the DC education landscape and the willingness of our partners to learn and grow with us will support us to fine-tune our supports for schools in our city and the development of our national programming. So we feel like DC is just the right place for us to do tons of learning. There are a number of diverse schools within this community that will deepen our understanding of what's possible for students and families. Secondly, we want to launch an alumni network. Our partners are constantly coming back to us and reaching out for support to sustain and reimagine their equity work in schools. We know that there's a great value in creating the network of our partners to learn from each other. And our goal is to create an online community for partners and alumni to share and learn best practices from each other in real time. So that is a really, really important piece of our work, to continue to support communities to lead this work sustainably on their own, beyond our partnership. And finally, we want to expand our work to 3 new communities. Kindred has always received significant interest in our national work, and we believe that our impact DC has positioned us to expand our work beyond our local context. We also want to grow with intention and sustainably. We have our first national partnership with Alexandria City Public Schools. Yay. I know you guys can't express excitement, but I can't see many people. And this partnership will allow us to pilot a grass tops approach to supporting districts to build equitable school communities across their system. And the learnings from this partnership will allow us to develop our national programming approach. So we're really excited about this opportunity and excited that it's right next door here in the DMV. So you've heard a lot from me, and we have a couple of our partners here on the call. We have Allison Kavanaugh, who is a caregiver from E.L. Haynes, joining us, and Jessica Morales, the principal at Bancroft Elementary School. And I'm gonna just ask each of them individually to share why they partnered with Kindred and what has come of their partnership and work with us, and then why they're excited about some of our expansion opportunities and what we're looking forward to in the next 5 years. So Allie, I'm gonna start with you.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm Allie Kavanaugh. I'm a mom of 2, a 5th grader and a 2nd grader. So we've been at E.L. Haynes for, I've lost track, 8, 9 years maybe. And so I started with the first year of Kindred at E.L. Haynes and have been involved the whole way through. My understanding is so that E.L. Haynes partnered with Kindred in order to create a caregiver group that we call ROAR, which stands for Relationships, Opportunities, and Resources. When the school's relatively new, it's about 16 years old. And when they started, they specifically did not want a PTO because they understood the trappings of a PTO and how the people generally involved with a PTO, dominant culture tend to focus on things that are priorities that perhaps do not reach as many people as they should. So they didn't have one. And they didn't want people fundraising and asking parents for things like that. So as a result, there was no organized way for families to interact with each other outside of just approaching people on your own, and which for someone like me, who's even pretty outgoing, was extremely intimidating. So you'd walk into this whole new situation, have no idea what you were doing and how to navigate it. And I think it took me the better part of like 3 years to get to know people and form relationships. And even then, it was when people did form relationships, they were very siloed. It was people tended to not talk to each other across, lines of race or language. Like there were a lot of barriers there. So the school wanted to change that. They wanted families interacting with each other, engaging with each other, with the idea of like caring for all of our children, getting caregivers to think like not just about their children, but about this group as a whole, and getting everyone to succeed. And how do we do that? So Kindred was brought in to help form this group in an intentional way, so that it would focus on how to make it as welcoming to as many people as possible from our community, and not just to like form a PTO and have goals and fundraise and do all those things, but like the group was actually the goal, just getting them together. And so since then we've done our own dialogue groups. ROAR has, we run surveys. We do a lot of point-to-point interaction between parents, just a lot of conversations, a lot of reaching out, informal coffees and breakfasts and meetups with translators. We've got WhatsApp groups for all the grades. We did a clothing swap last year, and we've organized a soccer program that's run by the families at our school, with a partnership with Tacoma Soccer, which was we had like 150 kids participate, I believe, which is like almost half of the kids at our school. So the benefit of working with Kindred is the framework that they provided and the modeling that they do in order to maintain the focus on equity and centering around voices that have historically been left out of these conversations at schools. Starting with the dialogue groups, they recruit people. They're so skilled at facilitating what can be, very awkward and stressful conversations. And they help the group grow and work towards this collective action and make sure that everyone's on board and given a chance to contribute, really kind of teaching and showing how that can work, how you make sure you get people to talk that perhaps might not be as used to giving their voice in these situations. They emphasize the importance of consensus and not speed when you are working together. Like it's not just go, get. No, it's like make sure everyone is comfortable. And they looked at our own community, and they also brought expertise and ideas of how to be as engaging as possible. And there was just so much support and so much time spent on the phone and working and materials that they give you. And I can't speak enough about how much support is given and guidance and the foundation that they helped us build as an organization, that we are we're 5 years in and we're still going and we're building and we're always doing new things. So I hope that wasn't too much, but I get really excited when I talk about ROAR and Kindred. So thank you for asking me to be here.
Yes, thank you. And one thing I want to just emphasize with the soccer program, it's not just a soccer program. I think one thing too, it really is leveling the playing field. I had to do that. And really sharing power. So the principals are there, school leaders are there, parents are there. And so it kind of takes the pressure down when certain conversations need to be had. My understanding is some of the surveys that are done are even done on the soccer field. So folks don't feel that they have to come and, go through, the barriers are taken down even through that approach. So one thing I love about that is just really thinking outside of the box around ways to share power with families, make sure that you're having, bringing people to a space that they want to be in. And so I think that's really important. So I also want to just highlight that from you all's work, Allie, as well. Thank you so much. Principal Morales, why did you all partner with Kindred? What has been the result of that work? And what are your thoughts about Kindred serving 30 more schools in DC?
No, I think that's exciting. Totally. Just so everyone has a little bit of background of me. My name is Jessica Morales. I'm the principal here at Bancroft Elementary. I have been here in August, it'll be 20 years. This is my third year as as principal. And I have 4 beautiful children. I'm also, I went to a bilingual school when I was little. I went to Oyster. And so Bancroft reminds me of what Oyster used to be like when I was growing up, right? And we partnered up with Kindred a few years ago because we have we serve a very diverse population. We have lost many of our Black and African-American families. I can count maybe on 2 hands how many students we have, Black or African-American students that we have in the school. And we do have a PTO, and I can totally relate to Allie's, conversation or share out where it's a very different group of people, of parents that participate in the PTO, and it became like PTO and everybody else. Right. And so I've already lost a lot of our Black and African American families. We're about 64% Latino. Now we're about 25% white. And we became very siloed. And so one of our goals has always been like, well, how do we work together? My ultimate goal was like, how do we bring both groups of families together? But working through Kindred made me realize that maybe we don't need to bring everybody together. We just need to have the same goal and everybody work towards that same goal. And so having Kindred has helped us have courageous conversations about race with our families, bringing it to float and helping our Latino families understand the dynamics of the United States and what does racism mean and how does it impact, the community, as well as having conversations with our non-Latino families to understand the challenges that some of our immigrant families, go through as they come to the United States or have to get used to the American schooling system, which is very different, right? So Kindred would do sessions with our parents during Saturday academies, which we hold once a month. Last year, 2 years ago before COVID, that's where we had these courageous conversations with our families. And it was fruitful because sometimes they didn't realize how they were being discriminated or that was discrimination until, the facilitator was able to have these conversations with the parents. What we've tried to launch is having the equity teams for our school, and little by little, we're making small gains. We're getting there. It has been a challenge. I'm going to put Zakia out there. She has worked at Bancroft and she understands the dynamic of the community, and it's very challenging, right? When the dominant culture all of a sudden is interested in attending this dual language school that has been here for years, and now we're being imposed on changes and wants that they may want, but that's not the goal of the school, right? And that's not our mission. And I will say, on a personal note, becoming a principal was one of my biggest fears, especially in this community. I'm one of 3 Latina administrators in the entire district. There are 5 of us, 2 gentlemen and 3 females. Latinas, you know, and we're characterized as being feisty. And I've been Miss Sakura, I call her Zakia, Miss Reed. The team has really helped me to be more confident and not categorize myself as feisty. Like, this is who I am. I'm very transparent, and that's okay. And just building my confidence. I remember rehearsing how I was gonna talk at the PTO meetings. I remember giving Zakia giving me signs like, you know, if she rubbed her nose, it meant something, or if she rubbed her head, it meant something else. But aside from working with the community, I feel like as a leader, it has helped me, you know, try to understand and be more confident in leading a very gentrified school. We still have a lot of work to do, but I think, you know, getting our families to understand how the system works, that they're part of this, of the team, that you don't leave it at the, you know, the work at the door for the teachers to take on with the kids, and helping families come together. It's coming along, but again, we do have, you know, a long way to go. So I'm excited that Kindred is going to spread, you know, the joy and the skills that they bring to the table, because I know what the impact it has, not only just on communities, but on leaders as well. So that a little bit of 2 cents of our experience here.
Thank you. And I'm going to add on to that as well. One thing that I've seen, it's not about bringing people together, but one thing that you have done is to share decision making. So there was a time when decisions were made with the PTA. And now you've been communicating to the PTA, I can't make this decision until I talk to the caregivers that come to the coffee, or the caregivers who are at drop off or pickup. I hear those concerns, I've taken note. So it's not about bringing people together, but it is about, again, sharing the power, sharing decision making, making sure that you have representative feedback and insight from everyone before prioritizing one group's interest over another. And so maybe bringing everybody to the same space isn't the goal, but having that input and having representative input is the goal. So,
yeah, and I remember we had to make some tough decisions, and it was almost like, I hear you, but have you spoken to the rest of the families, right? Like, who have you reached out to? How did you talk to them? Did you use the translation line? That was a very intense moment for me. I mean, there were moments when I was like, I can't do this. But yes, thanks for highlighting that, because I wouldn't have shared it. But yes, it's making sure that everybody's voice is being heard when making a decision that's going to impact the entire community.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you both for just sharing how our work looks and lives in real time, and it's ebbs and flows. This work is not a straight line. You partner with Kindred, it's going to be opportunities for growth for you as an individual, but also as a community. So while these two ladies are smiling right now, there are always bumps in the road in this work. So I want to make sure that's clear, but thank you both for sharing your experiences. And we would love to hear from you. We're going to open it up and transition to the RFP portion, but thank you so much. If you have questions, you can reach out to myself or anyone else on the team just to learn more about what we're doing. So we're super excited. I'm going to hand it off to Melissa.
As school leaders, this work has to be our message.
Always keep in mind that it's the student's success that we're really trying to build upon to help them be better students and to be better people.
The work of creating a caregiver-teacher group that's focused on advancing equity, it's really hard. It's messy, and it's filled with mistakes and forgiveness and laughter and joy.
I love what we do here. I'm also part of the Family Engagement Committee. Family Engagement partnered with Kindred to create the Parent-Teacher Partnership.
I had some conversations to learn what was going on in our community along the lines of race, class, and equity, and was there energy and momentum? And I was pleasantly surprised to hear that there was a lot.
I joined Kindred, and specifically joined the dialogue group, because dialogue is super important, because sometimes the issues that we experience as a group, as a community, are hidden, or at least not spoken. And they can still affect and influence what we can do and what we cannot do.
Oh my gosh. Since Kindred has come into the Walker-Jones family, it has been an awesome, awesome experience. I've met more parents now because it's not just about my homeroom. It's about the entire school. It's about the whole community.
What Kindred's been able to do, which I'm not sure how I would have done otherwise, is connect the efforts inside the school and in the community toward, and we're not there yet, but we're getting there, toward like an articulated shared vision of equity. Our parents need to feel different, and like we need to look different when we look at our leaders in our community. Our PTA is off the ground in an effort to have our PTA leadership and every parent leadership group more accurately reflect the racial makeup of our student body.
In 3 to 5 years, I want them to know, hey, we built something, and welcome every family. I want the word to go out. Go to Walker-Jones. They care.
In 3 to 5 years, I hope that the actual students will also have a voice at the table, separate and independent or interdependent from their caregivers. Like a quadrilateral where you have teachers and students, but you have staff and caregivers, where we actually have agency and power as both students and caregivers to affect decisions and to make them alongside staff and administration as partners in co-creating a racially just school community.
I'm Zakia Sakor, Executive Director with Kindred. Join us as we work to create an anti-racist and liberated society, starting with our schools. Your support will help us grow our network of equity leaders and advocates, joining forces to create just schools for our students.
All right. Well, thank you. And before we get started with the RFP portion, as you can see, we heard from Jessica and we heard from Zakia, but we love the rest of our Kindred staff who's here to introduce themselves a little bit before we continue. I'm Melissa Martin. I'm the Deputy Director at Kindred. I've been here about 6 months, 6.5 months now. And I think something that is a little bit about me is I, like many of the folks on this call, have been a leader in the DC public schools and in DC. And I think one of the things that I guess brought me to Kindred, and that one of the reasons I'm most excited to be in this work, is that you know, I think school, as a former school leader, or when you will go to school leader school, right? They, you know, you're supposed to work with families, and you know you're supposed to work with the students and drive this thing called student achievement. But you don't ever really know. You're never given a toolkit, or you're never really told, or you know, there's not a whole lot that helps a school leader figure out how to work really effectively with caregivers, and not just work so that you have this engagement with them, but like actually co-design and co-partner with them to create a better, more liberated space for schools. And so that's one of the reasons why I love the work that we do here, is that there are so many school leaders and caregivers out there who want to create a more just and liberated space, and actually want to kind of redesign the way the power structures in schools works. And so we're a group that can support schools to do that, which is really, really exciting. Because in order for us to really change what's happening here for our kids, we really need to do something different. And with that, I'll pass it over to either Kenya or Barbara or Grace to introduce themselves.
I'll go first. Hi, my name is Kenya Hall. I am a senior partnership strategist here at Kindred. I too have only been here about 6.5 months. I started as a social worker, so I'm trained in social work, and I spent time working with a school in Philadelphia, West Philly to be exact, where I ran a workforce development program. So from the time I graduated up until August of last year, I was working in workforce development, and I thought that work was really important. I actually really enjoyed it, but it just kind of continued to bother me that I kept seeing like these inequitable spaces in schools, and just kind of wondered what else I can do outside of potentially getting involved in policy. Policy is such a big, vast arena, I instead decided I wanted to do some smaller scale change that works with school communities in creating a more equitable and liberated space for the families that are there at the schools. Sometimes it feels like we do education to families rather than ask them to actively participate. And so I really wanted to be a part of an organization that worked to have and to get people to actively participate in this educational process. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Barbara, and I too am Senior Partnership Strategist who's been with Kindred for about 6 months. And what brought me to Kindred was my love for people and pulling people together around difficult conversations. So I come from both the social justice, but also the trauma coaching arena. And so a lot of what I've done is sort of guide people to having conversations that are reflective, that are difficult, and that move them from one place to another. And so Kindred's work with dialoguing, particularly with specifically with leaders, and really looking at the whole person, looking at the whole community, bringing people together where they are, and in dialogue, in over a span of time, getting them to go from one place to the next, getting them to see a vision and make steps toward that vision really appealed to me. And so that's why I joined Kindred.
I am Grace. I am an Operations, Communications, and Impact Senior Associate with Kindred. I've been here about 2.5 years, and part of what brought me to Kindred is not just a what, but a who. Someone who was part of Kindred through the founding and early days was a professor at my university, and seeing the way in which she held space and expressed community organizing and working with families and the opportunity to co-create and create liberated school communities really resonated. And in this role, being able to support the folks who are doing that direct work and the joys of hearing everything that is going on at schools and the changes being enacted day to day through dialogue and action. So that is what brought me to Kindred, and also part of the joys of being here. So thanks for the opportunity to introduce ourselves.
All right. So what do we hope to do in our webinar this morning? Well, we hope that if you are not excited about a partnership with Kindred, that you leave at 10:45 really excited about working with us. That we hope you gain an understanding of some of the key elements of a partnership with Kindred. And then this is also an opportunity for you to ask and answer questions about the RFP or partnership with Kindred. And there will be specific times, as I said, for questions and answers at the end, but please always feel free to jump in with a question either in the chat or by raising your hand, and we'll make sure to get to you. And so here is a little bit about how we'll spend our time together. Welcome. In a second, we'll do our connector. It's something that we like to start all of our sessions here or time together at Kindred. We do a connector. We'll talk a little bit about the Kindred journey. You heard Ali mention a framework. This is our framework for how we work with schools. We'll talk very specifically about the request for proposals, Q&A, and then we'll close. Okay, and so we'd love to hear from a couple people about their reflections about these questions. So we'll give folks a moment to think about what your definition is of liberation. So when you think about a liberated school community, what does that mean for you? When you think about yourself as a leader, a teacher, for your students, and then what excites you about a partnership with Kindred? We'll give folks a moment to think about their answers to those questions.
Maybe we could read it. Is that all right? Yeah. Fine.
Yeah.
Liberation in education is creating spaces where all children and staff feel safe emotionally and physically, loved, affirmed, valued, and have what they need to access their education. And that is from Jessie.
So it's a question that we ask our partners quite often. So, and your answers will probably shift and change, and that's okay. All right. So who are our wonderful school partners? We do have alums. So E.L. Haynes is kind of an alum school. These are the current school partners that we work with this year. As you can see, most of them are within DC, and this ACPS in the corner is the Alexandria City Public Schools. We're really excited to be partnering with them. They're just, of course, across the river. So a little bit of national, but very local. And once again, we thank Jessica and Allie for joining us this morning and sharing their experience. And then, so as we mentioned, Allie mentioned that there is this framework that we use. It's called our Kindred Journey. So now we'll start to talk about a little bit about what a partnership looks like with Kindred and kind of our framework. And so as Zakia mentioned, we believe at Kindred that privilege, power, and politics create pervasive and systemic barriers to access and opportunities for students based on their race and socioeconomic status. And at Kindred, we believe that in order to upend these systems and redesign and reimagine them, is that it takes the work of students, caregivers, and school staff working together to co-design and co-create. And so in our work with schools, we like to say there are 3 general phases to our work when we partner with schools. And all of our schools enter into phase 1. And the work that we do in phase 1 is really centered around building relationships and equitable mindsets. Allie mentioned those dialogue groups, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, but that is usually typically where the dialogue groups happen in our work with schools. And then in phase 2, we really start to think about how to design a shared vision. And this is where, people sometimes say, what is it? What are the stages? What are the programmatic elements? And it's like, well, in phase 2, it does become really messy because school communities are all really, really different. And that is a really wonderful thing. And so we want to partner with schools and really get to know them so that we know exactly what a phase 2 might look like in one school versus another school. I will show you some examples of what phase 2 has looked like in our schools, and everything is very different because each school has its own set of needs. And then by phase 3, we really hope that schools are sustaining and strengthening the practices that they've developed around phase 1 and phase 2, or even iterating and developing some new ones. And so what is the point of all this? Well, we hope that once students, caregivers, and school staff begin to reimagine and redesign the relationships that they have and the power structures that exist, there are these 4 long-term impacts. Of course, 1, that there's a sense of belonging that all school community members have. Of course, student outcomes increase because opportunities and resources are shared more equitably, and that the balance of power among these groups have shifted. So that there is definitely more a sense of co-creation and co-design as the school is working on creating a culture of anti-racism and a pursuit of liberation. So what does phase 1 look like? And once again, that's the phase that we start with all of our school partners. And to date, most of our phase 1 partnerships have involved a structure we like to call dialogue groups. And so here's a little bit about dialogue groups, is that dialogue groups are typically, there are a couple dialogue groups run. Typically, there's a group of caregivers and there's a group of staff dialogue groups that are meeting in this first phase of partnership over about 10 sessions. And in these dialogue groups, we hope that trust is built, a new awareness and a collective commitment to affecting change at the school is also built. Our dialogue curriculum also recognizes that people enter conversations about identity and race and social justice and anti-racism at different points, have different levels of knowledge and or experience. And so our dialogue curriculum really does recognize that. But we do set up from the beginning that they are, by becoming a member of the dialogue group, you are an equity leader in your school community. And the other piece about dialogue, it is distinct from debate or discussion. As a former school leader, I like to, there's like objectives and PD sessions and things that are learned and taken away. And yes, there are topics that we discuss, which we'll show you in a second. But in the dialogue, there really is a lot of meaning making that we ask participants do for themselves. Because as we know, part of the work around equity is, doing work on your own identity and then thinking about your identity in relationship to the system or the school in which you are operating. And so here are the dialogue sessions that as we have this year. As you can see, there are 10 sessions, and these are the topics that we discuss in our dialogue groups, once again, with caregivers and with staff. I'll give folks just a moment to review that. And something that is important to note is that we take feedback incredibly seriously here at Kindred. And so this is a newly revised dialogue curriculum that we are working with this year, thanks to Barbara and her colleague Meredith, who have really been working on revising and kind of upgrading the work that we do in dialogue sessions to more match our new mission, the mission and vision that we have here at Kindred. And you know, we revised the sessions because we got feedback from various participants about how the kind of the previous iteration of the curriculum was making them feel or how they were experiencing it. So when we ask, as a school partner, when we ask for your feedback, we really do want it because we really do adapt our materials and the work that we do based on what we hear from staff and caregivers and leaders. And so what are the impact of some of these, the dialogue sessions that we run? And once again, these are related more to these impact numbers are related to our previous dialogue curriculum. But as you can see, still parents were highly likely to recommend dialogue participation. Many of them form new friendships across lines of difference. We're currently surveying our current dialogue participants, and we hope to have results as strong as these for how people are experiencing their dialogue groups this year. The other thing to note about these dialogue groups is that we really work hard to make sure that the group of 12 caregivers or the group of 12 staff members is really representative of the school community. And so we take very seriously, you know, the demographics of the school community. And so we want our dialogue groups to reflect that because we believe it's really, really important for the people in the work to be reflective of the students who are experiencing school. And so kind of after this phase one, where we're building those equitable mindsets and those relationships, we work with our partners on kind of this phase two and what designing a shared vision for equity. And you heard actually Principal Morales talk a little bit about how she was designing a shared vision for equity and kind of how she's, for example, kind of now working with the PTA and as well as with this other group of caregivers that comes to a coffee to kind of, you know, figure out how they work towards equity, perhaps in different spaces, but along with the same goals in mind. And as we said, this is the phase where things look very, very different in schools. But here are some of the kind of key points that we work with schools around in phase two. That we do want to really, once again, we want to really get to know the school. We have a school actually doing an equity assessment right now and an equity action. They'll create an equity action plan. You know, we do continue to build and process identity and relationships and really start to work on those power dynamics. And then finally, you know, this is where this idea of co-design really starts to happen, where the caregivers and the staff and the school leaders who have been all kind of in dialogue groups or working on other spaces around equity come together to really kind of create a shared vision for what they hope to see in their school. And so what does that mean? What does this actually look like? Well, here are some examples of what our school partners have done. As we said, it looks different in every space depending on the school partner. So we had one school who worked on co-designing hiring practices, and you see the numbers of their staff of color jump from 13 to 34% in one year based on the work that they did. Let's see, there is a new family engagement strategy at one of our schools. And this PTA definitely, based on who is in the PTA, it is a much more representative group of PTA members this year. And then let's see, there's create a new family engagement. We heard Allie talk a little bit about some of the work that Roar had done to re-envision and recreate a new structure that served the school. And so here are the nuts and bolts about the RFP and the RFP process. So who are we looking for? Hopefully what you're taking away is that we're looking for school leaders who want to redesign and reimagine and disrupt some of the inequitable systems that exist for students now. We also really want school leaders who are invested in redefining the traditional power structures. And as a former school leader, I know it can be sometimes helpful. It can be a little nerve-wracking to share power with staff and with caregivers, but that is something that we are asking school leaders to invest in doing, is take on this work of really co-design and co-working in a different way with members of the school community. We also ask for school leaders who are invested in doing their own ongoing racial identity work so that they are able to lead into new mindsets. And here are some of the commitments that we ask school leaders to make. We do have monthly leadership coaching sessions. As Jessica mentioned, Zakia is her coach, and so she meets with Jessica monthly. We also offer monthly learning community sessions for our school leaders. And then we also ask schools to designate a staff member to support the day-to-day partnership logistics. So for example, with those dialogue groups, there's a lot of technical pieces that have to happen in order to recruit a really diverse group of caregivers or staff. And so we ask that there is a staff member who is designated to kind of be the point person for our team when we have these logistics pieces that we need. We ask you to participate in our data collection, like mid-year surveys, end-of-year surveys and such. And then you can see here's the contribution that we ask schools to make towards the cost of the partnership. And all this information can be found in the RFP document itself, which we'll make sure to send to folks as well. And then here are the key dates. Today is March 1st. Can't believe it's March already, but here we are in our second RFP webinar. And then applications are due by the 7th at 5. And then just something to note from March 10th through 25th, we'll be doing interviews with leaders, caregivers, and staff. So we ask that school leaders actually are the ones to fill out the application. And in their school leaders, we'll ask you to submit the names of 3 to 5 caregivers and staff members that we can talk to learn more about your school community. And something to note, when you fill out the application, we really do want to get the intent is to get to know your school. We know that schools are really complex organizations and that folks are working really, really hard to advance equity. And so it's okay if answers aren't perfect. It's okay if your school is not perfect. We really just want to get to know the authentic school community in which you are operating. And so keep that in mind as you're giving us names of caregivers and staff members that we can get to know a little bit. We'll also ask if you are a secondary school leader. So if you have middle and high school students, we'll also ask you to talk to a couple of your middle and or high school students about their experience in school to prepare for the interviews. And then we'll send our acceptance notifications on April 4th by 5, and then we'll ask schools to confirm their participation by April 7th. And then here are just some notes, some of which we've reviewed. There are several questions. We ask you to keep each question answered to about 250 words. If it's 260, that's okay. Please don't stress out about making it go a little bit over. We just wanted to give folks a ballpark about what we expect and what they should expect to do. And then we ask that you'll upload your school's family engagement plan. And of course, this is not something that you should be creating for us. We'd love for you to upload something that already exists that has been shared with caregivers and staff about how the school works with families. And then we already talked about sharing the names of 3 to 5 staff members or caregivers for stakeholder interviews, and then the piece about interviewing students. All right. So I've done a lot of talking. So now we have time for Q&A, and certainly please feel free to chat in questions, come off mute and ask questions. And Barbara, Kenya, Zakia, Grace, and I will be happy to answer. Yes, Patricia, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this wonderful session today. I have a question since we have touched connections with Kindred like 3 years ago, but I would like to know, is Kindred still working or interested in working with early child care centers?
Oh, yes. So we are interested in working with early childhood centers. We just haven't yet to date. And just something new to know is that I guess until this year, we have worked primarily with elementary schools. This year, we have our first secondary school partner, Cardozo, that Kenya is working with. And we've had inquiries from the early childhood centers this year. And so but it's been kind of in the middle of the year. Yes, we are open to working with early childhood centers and look forward to doing so. Amber, great question. Yep, it's $25,000 for each year of the partnership. And something that we hope is that, of course, we want to partner with schools long term. We know that school budgets change from year to year. Something to note, when you do become a partner of Kindred, there are two of our team members who will work with you in your school community. We have a lead school partnership strategist and then another person to support the work as well. So you will get to know those two people very well. So thank you everyone for your time. Really, we've loved spending Tuesday morning with all of you. We know it's a busy time, and so thank you for giving us an hour of your day.